Ready, Freddie? I'm just gonna fess up, the low light is killing my farsightedness. So I will call today's September 12th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting to order. First item is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or mistakes that you have found? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Mr. Smith with the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Dr. Prithridge with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Perfect. Throw me for a loop. I remembered that was on there, but I didn't remember the order. Commission appointment. The only outstanding one we have is OPTAB. Dr. Prithridge does serve on that, but in a council capacity. And we as a planning commission have a voice. We've historically exercised that. It just coincidentally happens to be a duplicate of his council assignment. So I will gladly accept a nomination. You can self-nominate or nominate somebody that you would love to see go to those meetings.
And just for a little bit of context, the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board tries to take a view on long-range transportation planning. We deal with some more street design level issues, trying to implement our complete streets plan. It deals with parking, also touches on things like our Amtrak and multimodal, so it tries to be a board that pulls all those things together. The upcoming year and a half might be a busy one on the board. In addition to the zoning code rewrite that this board will be doing, this commission will be doing, there's a contract to do some transportation planning that might focus on kind of schematic design of major corridors to try to make them complete. So I think it should be a busy year on the Parking Transportation Advisory Board, which is really a fun board, so that's a pitch for...
And Dr. Prithridge should never go into sales.
What's that?
It's going to be a really busy year. Who wants to do it? Not that anyone plans on nominating me, but I would preemptively say that I cannot serve on that board, seeing as I'm a trustee of the Butler County Regional Transit Authority, and there are at least adjacent perceived conflicts. So that leaves 5 other lucky peeps.
So where are these? Every other month, Mondays at 9:30. So we have October second Monday of every month. So that is flexible.
9:30 a.m. or p.m.
9:30 a.m.
This day and age, actually,
Yeah.
I wondered the same thing. I was like, okay, I won't complain.
I'll nominate myself.
All right, Mr. Arbuckle.
I will second
Dr. Prithridge gleefully second that. We don't have to roll call. We can voice vote? Yeah. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, and thank you.
Any opposition? All right. Seeing none, you are the newest member of the Transportation Board. I kid you not, the bifocals don't work as well in the dark. All right. Approval of the minutes from August 8th, our last minute. Any additions, changes, corrections to the minutes?
Actually, I would like to say something about the minutes. I was asked to explain why the honorific attached to my name is Mix. I chose to use Mix as an honorific because it is not based on gender. It is a term of respect. So that is my explanation.
Perfect. Appreciate the clarification. All right. Any additions, changes, corrections? All right. Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to accept as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Smith with the motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to abstain because I was absent.
Thank you, sir. I tend not to second or make motions, so the pool hath diminished. All right, Vice Chair Rosenberg with the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition?
My abstention.
Yeah, and the abstention. Thank you. All right, at this time, we'll entertain public comments for items not related to agenda items. So again, if you are a member of the public and would like to talk about an issue that is not contained on this agenda, feel free to step up. Please state your name, your address, and we will go from there. I was going to say, if you're city staff, you don't have to tell them where you live. It's okay. All right. I see nobody moving for those who are listening in. Next, we have reports from commissions, boards, committees, and staff. I'm going to have fun with this. Mr. Arbuckle, anything from UpTab?
Not so far.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Prithridge.
Nothing from OPTAB other than to report for the benefit of the group that the city did receive a $150,000 grant. Federal Transportation Administration, is that where that money's coming from, Sam? Via BCRTA to do basically multimodal planning as it relates to transit, which in Oxford, everything connects with transit in one way or the other. The scope of that work is still being kind of determined, but rather than some massive transportation plan update, OPTAB, and I think staff agrees that we can do some transportation planning update in-house, but use that money to do what they call 30% schematic design. So if you know a corridor should be improved to make it accessible for all modes as part of your multimodal planning, that 30% schematic design enables you to then go out for grants to fund those improvements. So I think that that's right now the direction where we're going to go, which is kind of two things. One, help us complete our complete streets multimodal, like how do we enable people to get across town regardless of their mode, but also the idea of what we call the Oxford Area Trail spokes, like how do you get in and out to the trail. So that's really exciting news on OPTAB. I wanted to provide a council update. You guys don't always, unless you follow council, you don't always see what happens with Planning Commission recommendations, and council did accept your recommendation to not reclassify Mary Day Park, and as a consequence did also accept the recommendation to not rezone Mary Day Park. The other thing that kind of is adjacent to this is the council will be hearing a second reading on our climate action plan, which has been something that the Climate Action Steering Committee, which also includes representation from Planning Commission, has been working on for the last year. A lot of those goals related to climate became woven in the Oxford Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan, but some of the nitty-gritty or details are now in the Climate Action Plan, which will be the first sub-plan or appendix to the comprehensive plan. So I think that's more than enough for me.
Thank you, sir.
Second that.
Vice Chair Rosenberg.
So at Housing Advisory Commission, we were updated by Jessica Green about the hope that there could be a way to keep a park and have still a low-income development at the Mary Day area. And council just decided on Tuesday to maintain that as a park space. So that happened. And then we also talked about looking into low income or affordable for on Chestnut, West Chestnut, some property there. So
Where at West Chestnut?
isn't that right by Charleston Avenue? Mm-hmm. Yep. So.
Where's Charleston Avenue?
Okay, so you're going west on 732 toward like the middle school, right? So before you get there, on the left is going to be Charleston Avenue, and it's those cute little townhouses that are adorable. They're amazing.
So the city owns and is in the process of acquiring a third parcel, kind of where Emerald Woods comes out onto as an area that we can use for development of housing in the future. So that's right.
No, thank you.
Clarification.
Yeah. The cottage community on Hester Road is continuing apace. I actually get to see it quite often, like as it's kind of going. So that's all I have to report from Housing Advisory Commission.
Thank you.
time is now assigned to CIC, but we have not had a meeting, so I have nothing to report.
Perfect. And Historic and Architectural Preservation meets tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have a work conflict, so I won't be able to participate. I've asked Mr. Perry to speak to a couple points of that, but before I do, there is one thing. We had the historic walking tours. What do we have? 2 of the 3 of them. So we've covered Hillcrest and Hilltop, part 2 so far. And University Avenue, Mr. Miller from Historic and Architectural Preservation will be leading that Saturday at 10:30. Great partnership between Smith Regional Library, HAPC, and McGuffey House, and obviously some other players. But and I don't recall the details off the top of my head, so Councilor French will be very mad at me, but we do have the historic cemetery tours coming up in October. They just changed the times, so I don't recall those, but it's just really to help people take a nice stroll in cooler weather, learn a little more about the history of the Oxford Cemetery, and the context of who some of these folks are. Part of the tour, which at least how I conceptualize it, is we see the names of buildings on Miami's campus or Western's campus or here in town. A lot of those folks are prominent from back in the day and the resting places here in town. So it's just a way to connect the past with our town now. And I'll defer the rest to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just add on HAPC, the one item that may be of interest to the Commission has to do with, as the city grows, there has been some interest raised in how there could potentially be some preservation if there are ancient sites that could possibly be disturbed during the development or the growth of the city, because the ones that were in the current city limits had been already obliterated by agricultural development or housing development. And so we'll be kind of summarizing some sample ordinances tomorrow night for HAPC. They're much larger cities, but just to give an idea of what some cities do. They're not in Ohio, but just as a way to kind of be prepared for growth in the future.
Thank you, sir. We've tapped all the possible resources. Moving on. Item 7, old business. PC 2023-07, 525 North Campus Avenue. This is for a conditional use. Proposed use is a new Fairfield Inn by Marriott Hotel. The applicant is Oxford Hotel Group, LLC. This was previously tabled, so I can't automatically get us into motion on this. I would need a motion to untable it.
I move to untable this.
All right, Vice Chair Rosenberg with the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Prithridge with the second. All those in favor of untabling this, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none. I will accept a motion to adjourn to public hearing.
So moved.
Dr. Prithridge with the motion. I will take Mr. Bracken's nod as the second. We've sat next to each other for far too long. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none. Mr. Perry?
Thank you. As I'm sure most of you recall, it was a lengthy discussion in August, and the item was tabled, as you just mentioned. We've had some dialogue with the applicant. I don't have anything to present tonight. We did get some drawings and a cover letter, which I can pass out to you, that kind of summarizes some of the subject matter that we've discussed. Also, sent a summary to the hotel group a day after the last meeting, and I think one of the main things that we wanted to discuss with them had to do with the orientation of the building. I'll grab my list here. And I know that there was a variety of different questions and comments and concerns that were raised. Some were from individual commission members, some were more holistic to the commission, and so I wanted to give a chance to the applicant team, to the hotel group, to address those. We did have we've had a couple conference calls We've had a Zoom meeting to go over some of those changes, and I understand that they've met with one of the neighbors as well to talk about, as far as the orientation and the screening goes, neighbor to the north. And then we did include a couple drawings that we received a couple weeks prior to this meeting that we included. One is showing the turning template, what we call a turning template for the fire truck apparatus. That the fire access road was one that was requested by city staff to be able to reach all sides of the hotel building in order to control demand on resources during emergencies, to be able to easily get to the surrounding sides of the building. The other one was what staff understood to be a request for understanding how the lighting and noise would potentially be emitted to the neighboring property to the north, asking about the elevation change in context with the existing vegetation. So they did provide a drawing for that. I guess you could call it kind of a vertical slice or a cross section, if you're not familiar with that terminology, through looking at it from the side of how that elevation would look. So that's in there as well. And then we did get some drawings yesterday evening. We haven't had a chance to review those. And then I just received a slide presentation from the hotel group as well that they would like to present. And I know that Mr. Burnett was not able to attend the last meeting, and I know he was willing to answer some of the questions about the orientation of the building from what his understanding was. So that could be something you could ask of him. And then I also wanted to just make sure that to lay out the options for you, which would be, obviously you can make a recommendation for approval with conditions, which we didn't put the same conditions or staff report back in the packet again. You would have that from the previous packet, and I have it as well. You could put it back on the table if you need more information. You can recommend to deny. Those are kind of your different options. But whatever you do, make sure that you have your findings that are in the record, either in the minutes or however you'd like to do it, so that we can have a good, solid decision. One thing I did leave out was council did approve a resolution that granted a waiver to the tree survey requirement, and this happened previous to this meeting. And what the intent of council was for that was to allow some land clearing to happen while this process took place. And so a land clearing permit has been issued by Butler County, and a coordination or pre-construction meeting has not happened yet, but it would happen prior to any land clearing that would happen. I think that's all I have to share at this point. And again, I don't have plans to present, but the applicant does have slides that they would like to present.
So I have a question, but it's more of a point of clarification as well as transparency for public record. So a month ago, we tabled this issue. A few Tuesdays later, City Council passed an ordinance to waive the tree survey, which is part and parcel to what was on the table of a commission. And it passed, even though we've had no discussion or finalization of orientation and or use of the site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Delightful. Thank you.
Can I ask a procedural question, Sam, which is, this always with these conditional uses about the scope of the discussion. You know, conditional use in theory deals with the trying to mitigate the negative secondary effects of a development. So I guess I would ask the question, what's the line between addressing those things versus wading into design review that's kind of beyond the scope of, like, you know, I might design this better, so like where's the line so we can kind of keep our conversation in bounds?
Yeah, I think it's pretty wide open. It's not uncommon for a project, speaking for this project specifically, not just academically necessarily, but this specific project, a project of this scope, it's not uncommon to have a couple different reviews. We would typically prefer to have as many of those as possible at the staff level, so that by the time we get to the commission, we've vetted a lot of those things. But it's still not uncommon to have a couple reviews with Planning Commission before it goes to City Council, and sometimes they can be significant. And for those of you that were on the commission when the hotel in College Corner Pike was reviewed. You may remember the different iterations that went through with building placement as well. And then for those of you that reviewed the cottage community, it was last month, we saw, I think, 4 different layout changes for that one. So yes, if there's something that is significant, my recommendation would be to tie it to one of the decision standards so that it's clear that there's a rationale for it. Otherwise, it's not uncommon to react to the design that's presented and to see if there are any nuisances that might be created. Because the fact that a hotel is a conditional use doesn't mean that it's not allowed. It simply means that in the design process, any negative impacts that could be created by the use should be properly mitigated. And if they can't, then it potentially could be denied. But that's historically not happened. Usually through the design process, those can all be worked out.
And so building orientation, I wasn't here in August, but that's in bounds
Yes,
when this
I think it is. I think for a site of this size, with the fact that there would be topography
At minimum, by
there.
precedent, I would argue that it's in bounds because we had a lengthy discussion about where the parking should be versus the building for College Corner Pike.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any question? Go ahead.
So could you just clarify in regard to this site clearing, the issue of part of the property not being within Oxford?
All 3 parcels are not currently in the city limits.
Right. So
The-
we did not allow. So just explain what
Sure.
the clearing has to do with
Yes.
the decision.
So this project had originally started the application and review and approval process outside of the city completely, and then it came to the city because of the requirement for utilities, the water and sewer. And during that discussion, the city and the county agreed for the city to actually review it as well. It ended up being denied by the county BZA because it just was a timing issue, I think, as far as when the utilities were approved. At the time of the approval for the county, it was denied because there was not a water service. And then the city began reviewing it, and during that process, the county still, to this day, has jurisdiction over permits of any kind because it's not actually in the city yet. And so the county agreed to potentially issue a land clearing permit if the city would do the field inspection of that. And so the permit still has to legally be issued for land clearing in the county, even though the project is in the process of being incorporated into the city limits. And then once it would be incorporated, then all of the other processes would be the normal city process. So it's more of just a legal, it's a legal arrangement between the 2 jurisdictions, if that makes sense.
Right, but I mean, just, in regard to actual, boots on the ground or bulldozers, is the decision to allow clearing pending?
No.
Pending anything besides us? No.
It's not even pending. It's not even pending the city because the city doesn't have any jurisdictional power at this point over anything regarding construction. It's all in the county because it's in the county jurisdiction.
And the county denied the application because it was going through the city.
They denied it. My understanding is they denied it because water service had not been approved at the time of their hearing. It just happened to be the same night as the city council review of the water service request.
Okay.
So I don't think it was about land use necessarily. I think it was more about utility connection is my assessment of it.
Okay.
Does that help, Ms. Webster?
I guess the sort of elephant in the room is can clearing occur at any moment?
Yes.
It can?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Perry? All right, seeing none, we will hand it over. I'm not sure who from the applicant will.
Mr. Burnett.
Burnett? All right, perfect. You have the floor.
Hi, Neil Burnett. Do you need my address, actually, or anything like that? No? Okay, good. Well, I wanted to get together this evening, and I did bring a deck of slides just to kind of go through and really talk about the project holistically, and also the things that we've been working on in the drawing package, and bringing those things together with the community involvement, and also recommendations from the city as well, incorporating those items. And we felt that it was very important to kind of just touch on some highlights of those. Again, we apologize for the drawing package not getting here in that for the Tuesday meeting here, Sam. But I believe those are all now in. So you can go to the next slide. This is just the typical type Marriott. Ours is a little different. We'll see elevations in the drawing package in the slide here. A couple things information-wise. So I'm just going to kind of step over here and talk about it, if that's okay. Tell me if you can't hear me. Again, you can read the bullet points, but this facility, we feel like it's going to anticipate 22,000 to 23,000 guest stays. That's based upon 92 Key Hotel here. We have a limited grab-and-go breakfast, food and drink. There will not be an alcohol bar, or a full-service bar in this venue. There will be a small fitness area along with this. There will be a conference room, and then we also have an outdoor patio as part of the project. And you'll see that in other slides. We'll go through, so if you pop through. Development information, just so we're looking at things. It's a $20 million capital investment. Projected construction payroll is going to be about $5.5 million here that we see. The development timeline, we are now anticipating beginning fall semester 2024 for opening for the project. So, operations information, just a couple items. 29 full-time employees anticipated. We're going to be upwards of $1 million in payroll at this facility for folks. So it's a nice facility. So we can jump from there. Okay, these bullet points should be in a package or a handout as well that you should have. And these were some of the things that were off of the agenda document. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight those and go through. And you'll see these behind the drawings that are behind this document. So one of the items that we can see is there was a question concerning the distance of the building off the northern edge of the property. And so the increase of the setback has been moved to 25 feet. You'll see that on the drawing here in a minute. And that's actually, we did that on all sides of the property rather than just the north boundary. And then with the access road that's been added to the hotel site too, has adjusted the facility just slightly more south as well. And we'll see that on drawing 3.0 sub-drawing. Now the building orientation, and that was obviously we were talking about that here momentarily ago. So the building orientation, and I'm sorry I was not here the last time, I was actually recovering from the surgery. It was an outcome really of a discussion with the community, and in particular also Tim Cameron, who is a property owner to the north. His biggest concern was the alignment of windows that would be facing to the north, and he wanted as much obscure glass, facing, not facing him, so he wouldn't, look up and see windows open there, windows open down at his place. And so the decision was made to go into more of a north-south orientation with the building for that reason, to make it more comfortable for the property owners there. To the to the east we would have the parking lot that belongs with the university on that side. So not a big issue there really to the window placement on the building. And then to the west we have a lot of distance to the neighboring property. We have a lot of foliage that will block that, and so so that's really the outfall as why we chose to go into that north-south direction, which makes sense from there. And we'll also see, and I'll talk a little bit about the trees as we go forward too in that area. There was a item concerning water runoff to the north.
You may have to have you a little closer to the microphone
sorry.
up there, just
Yeah.
so that she can do the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, in the water runoff was a question, especially to the north side of the property. And so what we've done on this project, and we'll see this on the drawings behind all this, is the access roads that go around the hotel and then the other roads within the hotel are all what we call inverted. So they drain to the center catch basin. That water moves to detention areas that are on site. So we're holding that water, to a detention area. And then, so we won't see any shedding off of that building to the north, other than what the north already presently has on it. So we're containing, per code and per the stormwater plan, we're containing everything to the site that we should be containing. So for runoff purposes. Then there was a question concerning ambient noise, air conditioning noise, heaters, noise. So one of the things that this style of hotel uses a PTAC unit for the guest rooms. The PTAC units are actually very quiet. These are typical Friedrich models, and they run less than 55 decibels in noise. So, the conversation that we're having right now is measured about at 60 decibels. So relatively quiet. They're also a multi-stage fan unit, so it also does not have a hard start. So you don't get that noise upon the starting of the unit, like the old type compressor units had. So, and then there was an item concerning vegetation, a concern that remains is depicted on the site clearing limits. So we have also maintained as much as we can on all sides of the site. And then we also, with the landscape drawings, have increased the amount of landscaping to various areas to aid with light spill, any type of sound buffer, visual obscurities, things of that nature. We'll see this on the landscaping drawing that's attached here as well. And this was really out of a result of conversations with the city, of course, and also with the community neighbors over there. We spent a lot of time walking with Tim and Sue and just looking at the various elements of the site and what they would like to see. And so this is what we had put on the drawings. So the turn lane analysis was another item on the agenda that we saw, and that turn lane analysis will be forthcoming upon the issuance of an access point permit. And when that's done, that will be performed by Bayer Becker with ETA for the turn lane analysis. The exterior facade, the natural materials was another concern, and that also has been increased. We'll see that in some elevation drawings here, and we've attached the quantity calculations that'll be provided on drawing A211 that will show those quantities as a whole, and hopefully I believe we have met the natural materials requirement with that. The access road concerning the fire access, it's depicted on the civil drawings, which we'll see. The turn radiuses, as Sam spoke earlier, have been applied. A travel route has been shown. One thing we did do down in the southeast corner of the property, where there's a little bit of a ravine there, we have applied a retaining wall, and then we've done a little bit regrading and resloping of that ravine just to help that area out. And so that is now shown on drawing 5.0. Then there was a little bit of discussion on the signage. So the signage that we have now on the drawings depict two signs. They depict a ground mount sign over at Morning Sun, and then they have one building elevation sign that is on the west elevation. We did want to ask, although it's not shown on the drawings, we thought it would be prudent, and we've talked with Sam as well, would be to put a non-illuminated directional identification sign at Campus Drive for people that are just happen to be coming that way. So And as Sam said, yes, land clearing permit, that was another item in the agenda. It has been approved and it's been issued by the county. So from that standpoint. So Sam, we can move to those drawings if you like. Okay, so you can see where the setback has been increased, especially on the northern line there. And that was also in discussions with, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you can use this. Okay, what do I do?
Then you'll get a, see the little.
Oh, yeah,
cursor?
there, yeah, cursor. Okay, I can
That way
point
you
to
can
it.
stay close to it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Sam. So, right, let me run up here. You can see we've increased this setback line, and we've done this all the way around the property, this dotted line that you'll see. So that increases our vegetation line for certainly to the setback area. Both Tim and myself have walked these entire lines, and the one thing that we are going to do with him prior to, again, with any land clearing, we're going to walk and set a tape line in for him. He is concerned a little bit about his drip lines, although his property line is indicated here, much like down here on these property lines. And so the setbacks should be sufficient for any drip line, but of course, if he has any really super mature trees that would be on that, we'd want to take that into account. And so we're going to set up some tape lines just for that purpose right there. Let's see what else on this drawing. Yep, there's obviously the ring road. You can see to the north here the retaining wall that has also been added on the drawing. And then Sam, page up or down?
To the right on the arrow.
To the right on the arrow key. Okay. This is the utility plan, and we talked about that in the bullet items. That's where we're getting internally drained, and then we are going into detention areas here and here on the site. So we're not shedding that water off of the site to the north here. We're actually capturing it here in the roads and then back around and to the detention areas. So we're protecting that as well. One thing on this drawing I might add, the water line right here that's depicted, this line right here that ties down to Morning Sun is also now tied to North Campus Avenue. And so that's a little bit of a value added benefit for the city because we've now completed a loop for the water line, which is important. And for the city, it's important for pressures and pumping, and it helps with the distribution of your water system, so, which is good. That jumped, yeah. Let's see, yeah, okay, so there's the water line. So that is a good thing to do for the city. And then going forward, this is the grading plan. This shows a little bit, again, the retaining wall that we talked about, and then we regrade this area right in here to help out that ravine and make it a little bit shallow. And so it just kind of cleans that whole corner up nicely, is what it does. Let's see. Somebody was talking about the site disturbance a little bit ago. So the red area that's on the drawing set indicates the actual disturbance area of the site. The green areas are vegetation that remains to the area. So, and then within these areas here, we have actually increased the vegetation now. So along the north line, we've added a very heavy buffer. These are spruce, honey locusts, a variety of good ground cover and tall cover trees, as well as there is a fence line that is going to go across here as well for an obscurity of the fence. We have added, there's shrubbery down here right off the parking lot, which will help break up any kind of headlight area to the building for parking. And then here to the south, we've done the same thing. This is actually, this parking lot is depressed anywhere from 2 to 3 feet and adjacent to the grade right here, the earth grade. And then this is a bed with heavy plantings as well to break up any headlights. So it should break up the lighting quite a bit. And then these areas that are in tan, these are all sod areas, new sodded areas. These light green areas are seed areas that will be seeding. And then as we move down along the access drive to Morning Sun, we've added additional coverage along here with fencing and tree cover here, and then on the opposite side as well to this property line, we kind of filled in this area right here because it was just a little bit light in coverage. So we've added a fair amount of landscaping in order to help create that buffer area that we're looking for. And I think it really does give it a very nice presentation presence. You're going to have a lot of trees in these islands, as you can see, trees adjacent to the building, and then of course around the site in various areas. So now to the fire truck, this was the routing end. It's maybe a little bit hard to see on this, but what you'll see is these two lines right here. And those lines are the route, and this has been a calculated fire truck, engine truck, a ladder type truck that has got the appropriate turning radiuses and travel path to move around the building and then obviously exit out onto Morning Sun right there. And here are the elevations of the building. As we were talking about on A211, here's the depiction of the quantities of materials that are on the facade of the building. So it's a combination of brick. We have fiber plank, we have stone, glazing, some ephes, and so there's, we believe we have hopefully met that requirement. And so I know that you'll take a look at that and we'll work from there. And so that is the front elevation, and then one of the end elevations, and this would be the other side, the rear elevation, as you're looking at it. So that is what I wanted to show you that is on the drawing sets that you presently have. So, and hopefully that helps address some of these items. Let me bring it, Sam, you want to bring this back over? Okay. Okay.
Right, are there any questions?
Can I ask a question? And forgive me for not being here in August for your 4-hour meeting. I guess we both weren't here. Can you answer a question for me that when this hotel was proposed, and we ultimately did kind of redesignate the map as campus, as something that's adjacent to Miami's campus. So when I was anticipating this, I thought the design might engage more towards the east than to the west. And so I'm just wondering whether you evaluated it from a couple different points of view. One, in terms of engaging the campus, of which this is really kind of adjacent to and uses. And also, we're trying to screen all these activities in terms of lights and headlights on the northwestern side of the building, which is adjacent to these private properties. Did you evaluate just flipping the orientation on this so that all the activity is adjacent to Millet with the lights and the traffic lights and it might, through some clearance, become visible, across the Millet parking lot, so there's a visual connection with Millet? I just am surprised when I see the design that the front door is oriented the way it is. And so did you evaluate an alternative that might orient all of it just differently?
If I could piggyback that, because I have a similar question that I figured it's probably easier for you to answer once. And again, we had a lovely 4-hour meeting, so unless you had an abundance of free time and YouTube, I think it's fair to say at least my perspective on the orientation was not east, west, north, south. It was orientation on the property, similar to Dr. Prithridge. I could care which way the front door faces. 9 out of 10 times, it was exactly what Dr. Prithridge said. It was its pinpoint in the box, not which way it was looking. He has the looking component of it, but I agree with him. Right now, it's up here. There's a whole lot of this that I was asking them why it was in the corner.
So are you saying from, if I understand, and maybe I may not be understanding.
For me, I'm just asking the question, like a mirror image of what you have, in which the door faces southeast rather than northwest. All the traffic to the front door, the lighting, the parking
So-
lot is all
so this would
adjacent
be
to
the front-
Miami rather than adjacent to the Cameron's property.
This would be the front door.
Yeah, that's what did you evaluate that? Because it seems to me, even just from the lighting schedule, you have small LED lights lighting, the back of a hotel is dark and quiet. Where the front door is where all the activity is, and just wondering whether you looked at that alternative. Is there a reason why the site prohibits it, for example?
In my footnote, what we had discussed, I believe it was your architect, was that lovely parking lot. And for those looking at home, the top corner is actually southeast. So if you go back, the top
On the
corner
drawing, yeah.
on the drawing is southeast. So
Here.
where that parking lot is, where that parking lot is where I also thought, similar to Dr. Prithridge, facing Millette away from the residence, or at least the wooded areas.
Part of the issue, to answer your question, and really the major part of the issue is in the geotech of the site. And the geotech is not favorable where the parking lot where you're talking to the southeast. That is not a favorable area for a multi-story structure. The area that it's in is in good soils, and as we push to the south, the more we push to the south, we're encroaching into, from an engineering perspective, from my perspective, we're getting into an area that it would not be very prudent to place a multi-story structure in that area. It's fine for parking lots, it's fine for light duty, but for any type of loading, I don't think it's in our best interest for any of us to have that. And so that area up in that corner is really the best soil condition. There were plenty of fills that were placed, and I'll use the arrow. So there's a lot of fills that were placed all through this area right here.
They buried a creek in there, right?
Yeah.
It appears so, yes.
I was going to comment on that too. I don't know if you remember the history of this, but there was a lot of unauthorized fill, uncompacted fill, and so I think what Mr. Burnett is referring to is the area where the hotel is proposed is probably native soils that are naturally compacted, whereas the ones that are in the southeast corner would be just dumping from soil and concrete from whatever the historical purpose was. So it could be built there, but it'd have to be all re-excavated and then engineered compacted fill put in order to be building on that site.
So, but if the building were to remain in the portion that you're currently, but the orientation mirrored, are there geotechnical or other reasons that that's off the table?
Well, I would say it's off the table, definitely down in this area. I would have to relook at geotech over here, but I do know we had a little bit of softs over in this area right here. So that might be problematic if we wanted to do a mirror and put the parking lots on this side of the building. That could be an issue.
Okay, but you don't know one way or the other necessarily.
Yeah, I'd have to reconsult
Okay,
the
thank you.
geotech in that area.
and as it was
But I know we had basically, there's kind of a line, if you will, like this through here. And that area that way has got a lot of fills in it.
And
Lot
just
of-
for update purposes, I believe the explanation also was there was an anticipation of it facing for future development towards 730 or towards the state road, even though that's not copacetic with the comprehensive plan.
And one additional question, I know you provided a sidewalk or multi-use connection to the kind of northern edge of Millette, but another connection adjacent is to that parking lot on the southeast corner. Did you think about some kind of tie-in?
Oh,
Down
to
there,
put
yeah.
another
Because the grade's not
sidewalk into
terrible
there.
there. I just didn't know whether you looked at that also.
Yeah, actually, in consultation with the university, this was really what was kind of coordinated and chosen. However, if there's a desire to get a walk across here, we can certainly take a look at it because I think that's relatively flat right through there.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do have a question. So the east side of the property, which does butt up against Millette,
like, what does that look like? You know, I see green, but like, what's kind of the plan there? Is it trees? Or
Yes. Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Yeah. So to this green area, like you see, all that green color, that's the natural vegetation that is there now, which are
Yeah,
the
it's
trees.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And
So-
then right in these areas where you see this tan, that's going to be all heavy sod, new sod in that area, and then this is going to be the grassed areas right here, in between the access road and the actual hotel structure. And then we have all the natural trees coming right along this line right here. A little bit of grass seating area from the road construction. Yeah, and there's a guest patio right here.
And then what's the plan for improvement in the area, like right leading up to Millette's parking lot? Because that's not in great shape right now.
You mean right here,
Yeah.
or actually on the edge of the parking lot?
See, now I have to orient myself the way you have it. Yeah, I know. so yeah. So the upper left. Right here. Next to Millette. Okay.
Yeah, right in here.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is all the trees that are presently there. All those are going to be preserved.
No, what I'm saying is, so that parking lot on
Oh.
that side.
Oh, that parking
is
lot?
not in good shape.
Oh,
I'm just
okay,
wondering,
that's
that,
how.
Like,
Oh.
area, is there going to be any kind of improvement plan?
To the parking lot.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I can't actually comment to that because that is outside of our property line.
Got you. It's just, it's
Yeah.
just not that attractive. So
Yeah.
having like a,
Yeah.
a walkway
I think if
here.
I heard they're doing a geothermal project in that parking lot, and then I heard something. If Tim told me correctly, I heard something like they're going to be adding carports and some other things. I heard a lot going on in that parking lot.
Couldn't
So-
confirm the carports, but I can
Yeah.
confirm the
Yeah.
geothermal well drilling.
Okay. Yeah. So that will, and when they do that geothermal, they'll probably have to resurface a whole lot of that lot, I would imagine. And yeah, you're right. That'll help clean it up.
I mean, like the edge. You know what I'm talking about? So-
Yeah, right where the edge meets the woods, right there, the tree line. So yeah. Yes.
This may be obvious, but I'll ask it anyway. How are you going to feed the construction project? Is from Morning Sun? All the construction activities are going to come from that side?
Yes. Yeah. Predominantly, we'll be coming in this direction right here, and so we'll have construction trailer operation off over here, where we have an area that we can that we're not going to bother the vegetation to this side, and we have plenty of room. Obviously, we have to maintain a pathway for emergency vehicles during the entire construction portion. So the first thing that will happen is we will get after we get cleared with the land and everything is approved, the process would be to get the base of these roads cut in as quickly as we can, and we'll get stone back on top of them and get them compacted and get them where we can traffic emergency vehicles to the site itself. That's one of the first things we have to do, and that's a requirement of our company as far as that is providing that safety.
How wide is that access road?
Oh gosh, yeah. Let me step over. I want to say.
I mean, plus or minus.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get off the dimension plan, but they're. Let's see if I can.
I mean, it looks like they're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same. Let's see if I can pick a dimension off of here. Yeah, they're. I think they're, Steve. I think they're almost 24, 25 feet. So they're in that range. Yes.
So I have a question on 3.0.
3.0.
And forgive me, this is a bifocal issue. Off of the parking, so on the screen that's presented,
Yes.
the large parking lot,
Here.
the
Or
one by
this-
the large basin.
There you go.
So if we go over all the way to the left,
Mm-hmm.
is that 3.0? I have different. There are some diagonal lines that it looks white and has green slashes, and I cannot read what that area is.
That's additional buffer.
Can I walk up and see your paper?
Yeah.
You mind?
It says
Which one are you
buffer.
looking at? Yeah, that's additional buffer, I think.
Is that it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, that is a dumpster that has been removed and it's been taken out.
Okay.
So that's what that is, and that was just.
And the green lines, that's additional buffer?
Yep. That's
Okay.
additional. That's where we filled in with all landscaping. We have a 8-foot perimeter, 8-foot vision walls.
Okay. At quick glance, it looked like green slanted parking.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure. Okay. Any other questions? for the applicant?
Can just, since you mentioned that the dumpster, is it different from what we have in our packet? Because the dumpster.
It is different from the drawing that Mr. Watt had. So
Okay.
the dumpster
Where's the
is
dumpster
shown.
now?
If you look, right there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Better.
So, and I think that's a much better spot.
All right. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. At this time, I will entertain any comments from the public on this matter. I will remind everyone that you have 3 minutes to speak, and I won't be cut throat, but you will be cut off.
All right, I'll try not to take that comment personally, but Seth Grobenbaker, Economic Development Specialist for City of Oxford. It's been some time since I darkened your door, so thought it was worth a visit. I do want to speak broadly first. I think several of us in the room love a good plan. We've got a lot of tools at our disposal that we've really been developing recently, as well as moving forward that continued development of tools. We have the Oxford Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan, Future Use Land Map. Council's approved some funds to move towards comprehensive review of all of Part 11 of the Oxford Codified Ordinances. So I think we're moving in a really positive direction as it relates to the future of Oxford and what developments we may see. A theme that I would love to see carried out in that as we move towards this new future is that we maintain our standards very high. Our standards is what really helps protect the character, the nature of our community, helps keep our citizens and guests safe. Really kind of one of the major hallmarks of cute, quaint, peaceful Oxford. Part of what makes us such a fantastic community. Another theme that I would love to see carried out, while we're maintaining those standards high, we bring those barriers low. We find ways to get the types of development that we want to see that'll be meaningful and impactful in our community. And I think an example of that, the waiver of the tree ordinance, I think is a good measure that kind of shows, well, how can we reduce barriers for a project that may best serve our community? So just wanted to have that in mind as I speak, maybe a little bit more specifically about this project that's in front of you here. A few things that I like about this project. One, adding a new nationally recognized brand. That Marriott flag, I think, will be very attractive to guests of the university. Some of those parents of those Marriott Rewards members that want to cash in those rewards. So this project in specific can speak to that. We have seen, I'm a member of the board of the Oxford Visitors Bureau, Enjoy Oxford. We're already recognizing stress demands on hotels throughout the Oxford area, directly related to Spooky Nook. Now, what we're not experiencing is guests of Spooky Nook staying in Oxford. Rather, it's the lack of inventory of hotel rooms presently in Oxford that causes spillover to other surrounding communities. Now, those communities can't accommodate our guests. So guests of the university are having to stay further and further away because those Spooky Nook guests are taking up all of those rooms in and around our community. So we've got a direct need for more hotel rooms, more keys here in our town. Some other things that I certainly like about this project, some of the payroll information, the capital investment, $20 million capital investment in our community. Love to see interested entrepreneurs and developers wanting to spend dollars here in town. Certainly that $5.5 million anticipated construction payroll, and then that the $1 million in annual operations payroll. All things that we want to make sure that we're directly getting that benefit from into our community. So that said, what I would love to advocate for is encourage you to consider the approval of the conditional use as it relates to the zoning in order to allow for this construction, as well as encouraging the applicant to continue through the annexation process. And let's see this project get pulled into the city of Oxford and make sure that we've got a product that we can all be pleased with. So that's more than my time, but thank you.
Thank you, sir. New toys. Any other members of the public? And just be forewarned, the new toy has a timer on it, so the red light is the color. So if you could restate your name from the last meeting, if you could state your name and your address, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Craig Erickson, Morning Sun Road, number 5280, and also properties at 5150 and 5152 Morning Sun Road, which is primarily the property that is on the western side of this diagram here. And in total, it's about, I think, 4.6, possibly 5 acre. And when this project was first brought to my attention, it would have been in January. And all along at the county level, they had stipulated for their approvals to climb up the ladder that there would be berms all the way around our property and also the north side, 6 to 8 foot high berms, plus no vegetation or trees would be removed. And that was the understanding all the way up till currently here, I guess. So I would like to have the opportunity that our neighbor has had, and I've been working on their behalf, I think, in front of the council here to take learn about their problems being at the bottom of a valley there. But I have similar concerns on the property to the west, and I would like to have some opportunity to discuss with whoever to have that same opportunity as our neighbors have had to discuss my concerns. So that is one thing, is equal opportunity perhaps, but also calling to mind how this project has been pushed and described at the county level was with the berms, and also all lighting would be directed inward and no light coming out of the project. And that was the understanding all the way through, and that's kind of a good, understandable approach to it. But I'm not sure how these present plans, which this is the first time I've seen these plans, by the way, and on the screen. I haven't seen anything in the paper. I've been able to talk to anybody about it. So I would like to have that opportunity to voice my concern and see if they can be addressed. Then the final concern is you have the drainage pond there. What does that empty into?
So I don't know that. We will discuss that and get some clarification, because I'm sure folks in general would like to know. But, all right, sir. The red light has gone on, so I appreciate your comments.
All right.
And we appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
And will I have a chance to discuss my concerns further?
So this is public comment. I think city staff have heard your
I've met
concerns.
with Mr. Erickson.
Yeah, so we'll ensure that city staff are in touch with you after the meeting.
I'll be here and available.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other members of the public would like to speak on this matter? All right. For the efficacy of our YouTube viewers, there's not a lot of people in the crowd who could stand up. Or that haven't already spoken, I should say, as well. All right. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn from public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Smith with the motion. Second. Mr. Bracken with the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Seeing none, we are adjourned from public hearing and in commission session. So, just to revisit, and we do have two newer members. We do things in a modified sense that's been handed down from a few chairs. Hypothetically, in traditional Roberts Parley Pro, we would accept a motion and then discuss it and probably have an eternity of amendments. But what we do is we talk through it because of the design criteria, stipulations, previous conditions. I mean, there's a lot to digest here. So I think it's fair to say we come to some level of continuity or disagreement, and then from there, motions are made, accepted, so on and so forth. So, not that everyone has to speak, but I will give everyone the opportunity, and then obviously it's a little more dynamic of a conversation. So, I'll open the floor for whomever would like to kick off our conversation.
Do we know if the fire chief has reviewed the changes in the turning radius?
No, we do not.
Okay. You guys know historically I go last. A couple points, and I just want to reiterate again so that we're all on the same page and that maybe folks in the crowd or on TV understand. I was carbon copied on an email this morning, I believe at 8:19 of the packet coming in at 5:27, I believe, last night. So that is why we did not have the information ahead of time. Mr. Perry, what's the traditional, refresh my memory, when did the agenda go out?
Thursday.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that's why we were handed paper packets at the meeting. Just in case that was going to be a question, thought I had it off. All right. So
can I just ask kind of a procedural question from Mr. Perry, because you've been involved in, I mean, I guess a couple of the choices we have, we took it off the table. We can recommend approval, we can recommend denial, or we can table it again, or those are the choices.
Yeah.
Based on information coming in, where do you feel we are in terms of confidence level of having all the information we need to, for example, accept or deny tonight? Do we have what we need to do so?
I would say you're a lot closer, but since we haven't done a staff review, I'm not comfortable making a recommendation for approval at the staff level.
Okay.
But I think they've done a really good job of providing plans and responding to comments. It just hasn't given us enough time to send it out for review and collect all the comments and make a formal recommendation, which is what we would normally do. So it's more how comfortable you are with risk based on listening to the comments, which are on tape, which will be recorded, which will be in minutes, but I wouldn't say it's the traditional, it's far from the traditional process that we would have, but I think it's mostly on the timing. It's not really on the merits, from what I can tell.
Well, we could also stipulate recommendations and approval like we usually do. Like we often go, assuming we have fire chief's approval, we could go forward.
So if this was not a conditional use, things like turning radius and number of fire hydrants and stormwater management plan compliance, those things would all be required anyway.
Okay.
So it's really, you need to focus on the things that are beyond the code requirements. Yeah. So they're codes, but they're decision standards that are particular to the conditional use.
And to Mr. Bracton's point, a couple different options are we could ask for changes and table and wait till we see exactly what we want before we recommend it on. Or there's also staff review before it gets to council in 2 readings, so one could stipulate conditions that move it along.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. You also have the conditions from the previous meeting that you could find could address some things, or maybe you find that it doesn't.
Okay. So, and maybe this involves our law director too. So I have, a question, but a candid concern. There's been a lot of what I would say is abnormal engagement of city staff, bypassed processes, and things of that nature. If we were to approve anything, not even this, what binding or how solid are the recommendations that come out of the commission to council? Because, as I said, I was pleasantly perplexed to find that the cart was in front of the horse and the barn was locked. So I personally, from procedural and timing, and having been a bureaucrat and studied this stuff, I kind of am concerned that we could say, hey, in a magical world, yes, move forward under these 14 conditions, and then by the time it gets to council, 3 of them are accidentally in file 13. So, how solid is what we recommend to council, and what kind of or level of interventions can be applied to or derail what we recommend prior to council?
I'm not sure this requires the law director, but I will give you my answer.
I want you to earn your keep.
I prefer it when I don't have to talk. But seriously, the Planning Commission's review is an advisory. You're an advisory body. You make findings, and you give advice to council because you are the body that presumably has a core level of expertise on subject matter that is more comprehensive and knowledgeable than council as a whole. Now, that obviously isn't true at an individual level, certainly certain councilors perhaps, but I think it's a matter of respect of process here. I realize that you have a concern about that in some ways, but ultimately, I think historically we've seen that council considers what Planning Commission has to say. You have 2 counselors who are on Planning Commission, which is by design, so that I think that the considerations that Planning Commission thinks are important enough to get to council are in fact heard in the course of that, as well as being memorialized by the minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. All right. Thoughts? And you gentlemen are definitely welcome to continue. I can only face one direction at a time, and somebody next to me has poked me for years for not facing the right way, so I had to face the right way.
Sure, you know what, I'll go ahead, because you faced me. And actually, I don't have that much to say at this point. It really does look like so many of these things, these concerns have been addressed. I do think that that all the different property owners around this should be spoken to, but it sounds like city staff is like on top of that. I just want to say, as far as like which way lights are facing and like advertising to Miami's like Millette audience or whatever, that I've actually personally been to several hotels recently that have been super nice, and that they were designed so that it was actually kind of relaxing. So you go down, you have an entryway, and there's like trees and landscaping, and it's nice. And you go in, and yeah, there's lights to get in, but it's actually kind of secluded, even though it's not. So I think that that's actually something that I would love to see in Oxford, is some of those tall trees that I see are being preserved and have been on the property. And I am super in agreement with every single thing that Seth has said tonight. So just want to put my great support for this project, and I am sure other people have criticisms, and I'll let them do it.
Yeah, so I don't have criticisms, but I feel more comfortable if the staff would review these changes before we made a decision on it. I'm not steadfast against deferring, but I feel more comfortable with reading.
Would you be okay if could we stipulate full staff recommendation like we would have had before this, had timing been sufficient?
Sure.
So part of the paradox we're in is, by the time this hit our commission, there have been a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions, expectations, changes. So I think it's in some respects, one could argue it's a perspective issue. Some people have been having this conversation for 9 months, but the current board that's making a decision is in month 2. So I think that's also a disparity that is pertinent and normally does not occur or should not occur.
Could I just
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean that's that's a point that because this helps me understand this a little bit. Like, I mean, to be honest, the city kind of we feeling in a rush from the minute this process began, because somehow we're trying to accommodate a development and we want to see it through to completion. I think everyone's in agreement that the substance of the development is good, and so I'm tempted to say, for example, well, I don't want to have another, table it again because that would slow it down, but I also the fact that we don't have all the material that the fire chief, it's not on the city's fault that we don't have all those materials tonight. I mean, I feel like had staff been able to make all this, so I come in really tonight wanting to move this forward. However, I also, with Mr. Arbuckle, the fact that we don't, that as detail-oriented as staff is, for them not to have the chance to go through this, and these changes that we're seeing that are even different between the packet, if we tabled it tonight, it wouldn't be because we were slowing the process down. That's my feeling. I'm not saying that we couldn't handle it with those conditions, but if we table it, it's not because we're putting undue brakes on a process. Like, I think staff should have an opportunity to review all these things in great depth. If I could just share my thoughts, and I'm sorry I wasn't here in August, I feel like for the most part this has resolved a lot of the things that I've heard people talk about. I like the direct connection to Campus Avenue. It provides the fire. I will try to restrain myself from trying to do design stuff when I'm not the designer, right? It's a conditional use. In my ideal world, I would see things different, but I want to, refrain from that because that's not my role. I would like, if there were time, I would like to see the analysis of the mirrored development, that would then put all the light that's going to be on the facade and the light's going to be in the parking lot and the people standing in the front and all of that stuff oriented towards Miami and not to the northwest. And if it were technically feasible, I think that would be it just makes more sense to me, I'm not saying that, but that's a different design, and I wasn't here in August, so if that's not the will of the commission to see what that would look like, then I'm not going to push that, but because I wasn't here. The two little things that I would say is that I think that I do think in terms of urban design, in terms of kind of axes and stuff, and so I'd like to see a more direct axis, comes in off campus and it weaves around and that kind of stuff. I do think most people are going to come in off of 725 or whatever, 732, but they're going to come in and out on Campus Avenue because that's how they're going to go uptown. I think we need to strengthen that axis because I think that's the way most people are going to be interacting with the city of Oxford is going to be back and forth on campus as pedestrians and vehicles. So I think making that connection visible, transparent, like a sign that you're looking down campus. You guys were talking about some kind of sign at the mouth, whether there be building signage on that side so you're looking in, you can see the hotel. I'd like there to be a stronger access because I think that's the way people are going to go in and out of there. I also think that, I don't know why Miami thinks that dumping pedestrians off at the far northwestern corner of Millette parking lot makes any sense at all. They have a pedestrian access that goes directly from Millette across the parking lot to the southeastern corner of this site where you have a parking lot. I'd like to have some kind of direct pedestrian access, lighting. In my ideal world, this building would be mutually visible with campus. You'd be able to see it. I'm with Commissioner Rosenberg that it's fine. I've been in nice hotels that are in the woods too. But to the degree there are connections that people are going to go to Millette, I don't know why Miami thinks that that's the best place to do it, when I think the way that people want to go is they're going to want to go southeast and directly across the pedestrian access that currently exists across Millette. And those things would just strengthen, I think those little design details strengthen the connection of the development. Other people are not as obsessed with transportation as I am and walkability and that kind of stuff. But I think those little things could make this more functional. Other than that, you know, so like to me, that I would love to see what it would look like mirrored to see if it's possible. Because I think that instead of like the idea that we're planning Arbor Vitae or whatever to try to like shield lights, like what if the lights didn't go in that direction in the first place? You wouldn't need to shield it. Like if I were the neighbor, I'd want us at the back of the hotel. It was dark, quiet, and have all that stuff. But that's a bigger ask. At a minor ask, I would say, you know, strengthen the alignment with campus and have some kind of alignment that runs along the southern border that ties into the Millette parking lot where people would actually want to walk to a basketball game in a rational way. And that could be probably okay. You know, I think that addresses most of the things. So I want to thank all of you guys for going through 4 hours of meeting on, and I just, this is just me as a counselor. I remember being on planning commission and having my fellow commissioner, Dick Keebler, was on council, reminding, this is just advisory, pal. You know, like, but we start with the planning commission recommendation as kind of the default. It doesn't mean we don't overrule it, but the default. I mean, I don't think we should short circuit the process, but you know, nobody puts the time and detail into it than staff and the planning commission until 11 or whatever at night, and so I think council tries to default to that. It makes our job easier and quicker. But it is advisory, and sometimes we vote against. So.
Well, there's another factor that I want to present into the record. Some of you may know it already, and it's not intended to influence one way or another what this body intends to do. But at the next council meeting, there is an agenda item to consider the pre-annexation agreement, which would have the processes and the checks and balances of staff approval and other things in there that council will be considering. And as you know, because the city's not going to give away its utilities without some quid pro quo, which is the price is annexation for that, that's a process that is also part of this as well, that I think it's fair for the planning commission to consider as you decide how you want to proceed as a body.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it is interesting. Technically, we're voting on a parcel that doesn't fall under our jurisdiction.
I agree with previous comments. I think it's okay if it's allowed, and I think it is, to stipulate approval from staff generally, just like they would prior to these conditions, and specifically the fire chief that I have concerns about. But assuming the approval's there, I default to them too generally. I trust their expertise. And otherwise, I think this is pretty good.
Thank you, sir.
So I agree in general with everything I said, but I would feel much more comfortable if staff would review it before we would officially move forward. The concern that I have, and I do want to acknowledge how responsive the applicant has been to concerns that we've raised, so great job. The site is very complicated, and I just feel that issues of runoff, how much of the trees can really be saved, sort of the environmental impact of this, I think is worth a deeper look by staff. So that's where I come down. I think it's a good project, and I want to approve it, but I would really like the staff to weigh in on details.
Before I get to you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Perry, could you give the 30-second synopsis of the difference between township, county, berm requirements in the city?
I'm actually not that familiar with the berm requirements. I know that it was something, the county's general requirements for screening adjacent uses have been pretty minimal compared to City of Oxford's requirements for screening of adjacent uses. So I think for the county, having a berm around the perimeter and having a setback was about all that was going to happen. And so in the city, there was a lot other, there's the lighting and there's additional setbacks and there's landscaping materials that go above and beyond. So I think removing the berm, I think what the city adds is more than what the county was requiring, was my assessment of it. So I don't think removing the berm is going to necessarily be problematic for screening. But it could send a confusing message to the public that, okay, the previous design is now not as good. So I think that's really the history with that, because it started with the county.
And I just remember, and not to, the Shell property had a berm there from when it was part of the township, and we didn't require it as a city. So I also
that's definitely an older requirement from the 1990s that I think has just stuck around for some jurisdictions.
Mr. Bragg?
I would just say, I would personally not prefer a berm wherever it would displace trees. I'd rather keep as many trees as we can that are already there.
There's some lovely berms on College Quarter Pike with trees on them. I'm
Quite
totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. Mr. Smith.
I want to thank you for addressing all the points that we threw at you. There were many, and several of them were mine. Thank you for addressing the material on the building. And it's still a good-looking building. I've seen many of these. It's nice. I've looked at this site a lot too, from all sides. I was down in the Millette parking lot today. I mean, that trees and undergrowth and brush that's there is a good divider. I mean, that'll be a good sound barrier, pretty good for headlights and whatnot like we've got there based on the sectional elevation you gave us. I mean, the tree height and the building height are going to be darn close. I mean, it's really going to be tucked in this kind of little oasis of trees, so it could be a real nice little intimate feel in there. I think based on the work they've done and addressing all our concerns, I'm ready to move it forward with conditions as well. The chief can always look at the turning radiuses, and I think those could probably be corrected before final building plans are submitted if he finds a problem with that. We could stipulate that, staff review is also a must. If they find anything that needs to come back to us, we could do that too. I love David's idea about the southeast sidewalk, because you're right. Miami spent a whole lot of money on that promenade sidewalk right through the middle of their parking lot, and it would, make sense to line up with that, because this seems like this is oriented towards the football stadium for football games, and that's only 5 weekends a year. Where we have 15 or 20 basketball games. So maybe that becomes a condition that we just look at putting an extra piece of sidewalk on that southeast side from the parking lot. I was kind of on the fence about an additional sign up at Sycamore, but you kind of swayed me on that too, David, that maybe we need to, push people that direction towards it instead of maybe making them shy away from it. So I'm probably okay with that too. So that's where I am.
So point of clarification, you said a sign at Sycamore. I don't believe they'd be permitted to have an off-site sign on another parcel. You mean on the college pointing towards Sycamore, correct?
Okay, then I must have misunderstood. I thought we were going to put a monument sign
On the property.
Oh, okay.
But it would be it would still be the Campus Avenue access point,
all right,
which leads to Sycamore.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't actually be off-site on Sycamore.
All right.
But those monument signs are only.
Yeah.
So what is their? I didn't pay attention. What's the current building signage? Do they have facade signage currently? Could there be facade signage on that southern facade that actually would be visible from Sycamore, theoretically?
I'm sure they would be fine with as many signs as you wanted. I think what was discussed when you weren't at the August meeting was it would be 2 wall signs and 1 freestanding sign, but I think what we're thinking now is flipping it to 1 wall and 2 freestanding, because then there would be another one on Campus Avenue, which could potentially be one of the main entrances.
Also, I am completely blanking on his name.
Mr. Burnett?
Mr. Burnett had said an unilluminated sign, but also knowing, seeing a lot of hotels and traveling, this particular brand does have low illumination, so it wouldn't, or that choice would be definitely something we would want, so it didn't impact the North Campus residents.
What I had suggested to them was a non-internally illuminated sign, so then it has a floodlight, but it's not like it
It's
it
directional.
doesn't glow like a highway sign would. So,
Yeah, but it wouldn't be your traditional placard, monument, main entrance sign.
but if you wanted to allow a wall, because this site has essentially 3 frontages, if you wanted to allow another wall sign, you would need to say that now, because doing it later is more complicated.
Yeah, I just imagine that you would want a monument sign on 732.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think if you're coming up Campus Avenue, you don't need a sign to tell you get, because you're like in there. And so to me, I'm thinking that a wall-mounted sign on the southern facade does the work of drawing people in on Campus Avenue. And you may or may not need one on the west-facing facade, because if you come in, you know where you are. Anyway, some combination. I just would like to enhance wayfinding from the south is what I'm saying. The signage would provide a little bit of that.
Looking at the diagram, I wonder if a south-facing sign at an appropriate size would help. Because if you think about it, if you're coming up a potentially dark residential street, any illumination of the property would completely mask a building sign until you got there. By that point, it defeats the purpose. So,
I don't think we're going to be able to.
well, it has to do with the number of signs. That's
Sure.
why.
So we gave them some, but if, as long as we stipulate some combination, it seems like some stuff has to get worked out between here and
It
council.
does. It
So what
needs to.
what would you feel like we'd need to
I think we just
clarify?
need to reword condition 14 from the previous one to give staff some more authority to work with the applicant about what's appropriate for the context and the location and the wayfinding. Because I don't think we're going to be able to get to that in the time that we have left tonight.
Well,
If you're
we have
inclined-
2 hours.
and that's if you're inclined to recommend approval. But yeah, the way the condition was worded before just says a waiver to section 1151.05A3 shall be granted to allow for a total of 2 wall signs and 1 freestanding sign, contingent on each wall sign being limited to 70 square feet in size, and the future freestanding sign meeting all normally applicable regulations.
I think what I'm talking about could fall within what you're describing here.
Would you be able to put those up? I have them on my phone, but they're
Yeah.
like negative
Yeah, I
2
can do
font.
that.
So if you would,
You may have to move on to some other comments while I do
that's fine. So just as Mr. Perry works on technology, so there are a couple different. There's almost a continuum of what we can do. There's a flat out motion to deny, disapprove. And then on the other end, there's a motion to approve with conditions as is, because a conditional use will have conditions. And then there's somewhere in the middle where we could put caveats, safeguards, checkpoints. As Mr. Perry said, a lot of these are codified. The fire chief does have to sign off. There are utility requirements. There are certain components that are either in city ordinance or Ohio Revised Code. But I also heard at least a couple of folks who, if we go somewhere in that middle part of the continuum, we would have to be extremely clear on kind of the deal breaker points. So yes, up to this point, but I didn't hear, nor do I think it's appropriate to just, oh yeah, as long as staff agrees, because I think there were some still conditional concerns beyond, fire radius and things of that nature. I mean, when the chief looks at it, it says yes, no question. That's pretty easy, whereas some of the other things have quite a bit of gray area. So again, we can craft this in a way to empower staff to execute kind of the direction of our commission. But again, and I do respect and understand we are advisory, but as I said to city staff earlier, you can't file a lawsuit in district court and decide you don't like it and call John Roberts because you just want to cut to the chase. So there are processes and procedures, and our charge, if you read the city charter and every piece of legislation and policy, it is our responsibility to do the work so that council can pretty much proofread and embellish slightly. It's not for them to redo all of our work. So I don't want this to be misconstrued as overbearing, yet conversely just kick the can down the road, because council will eventually look at it. So I just want to state that. I hope I killed enough time for you. Mr. Perry.
You did a good job. So this is the elevation drawing that we just got last evening, and this I think this is actually should say south, but because architectural east, so this would be looking from Campus Avenue, looking north. So I think there's plenty of room here for a wall sign right there. So I think maybe just a straw poll of the commission members on whether you're okay with more than one wall sign, and then we could just work
Food
that
for
out.
thought, if you're heading north on campus, the only portion of the building you will inherently see, regardless of topography, is the canopy. So that's kind of...
There's almost a sight line there.
Yeah, there's almost a sight line. Once you get up there.
Yeah, it's true. I don't think that's it.
Yeah, so if you're 3 houses down, you wouldn't see it because of the tree line.
But just clarification, Sam, the condition 14 already allows for total 2 wall signs and 1 freestanding sign, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are we talking about any changes, or what we just described falls within that?
As long as that's okay with everyone else.
Okay.
You can just leave it the way it is.
Okay.
I just want this, my thing is logic to signs. So I'm indifferent on wall or monument, but, always I'm the one who points out when a monument sign's smack dab up against the woods and fairly pointless. So as long as it's logical, I'm indifferent. And doesn't disturb the neighbors, but again, that'd be one really bright Fairfield sign.
So just to clarify, Mr. Chair, the one thing I also heard is some desire perhaps to table it tonight in order so that staff could have the full time. I mean, that was one option on the
I
continuum.
did hear that as well, yes.
And I don't know whether, but I heard that from, but then also attaching with conditions is there, we want to.
I'm okay with this.
Gauge the temperature in the room on
I was going
this
to say,
table.
yeah, exactly. I'm okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, yeah, I want staff's approval too, but I don't mind just stipulating that, and then anything specific as you were outlining, per signs, per walking to the east, like if you want to add them, I would be good going forward with that.
And I'm good either way. So that's where I want to.
It's funny. I looked to you to ask a question. You already had my answer. Go for it.
Well, I think you have to ask yourself a threshold question, and that is, perhaps you want to consider a motion on whether or not you want to table it versus go forward with your recommendation to council. Because you could go back and forth all night with this. You need to get some structure to what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I was actually going to do a straw poll on if,
I would suggest just do a motion in a second if you got one.
And before we do that, does staff have a recommendation on such a motion? Would staff great, you're in, so
He doesn't like to play in
the
parlay
tabling or
crowd.
not, you're not.
No.
It's your decision.
So
I mean, I'm making notes on it.
Okay.
Wrong, but
I think that you can fairly say that staff will adapt to whatever it is that the commission decides to do.
I don't think my risk. I don't want to create a precedent where we are making recommendations on things we haven't fully reviewed. I don't want to start that practice. But if you all, as a group, want to pass something on to council, we can do that, and we can write some language to help you do that. But you need to decide that among yourselves.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, and this is, and again, you'll tell me if this is off the wall. We have things like minor amendments where the chair and staff talk. So in that spirit, if there was something, I think it's fair to say between the law director and the chair, if staff had a big enough concern before it just went to city council with a, hey, by the way, here's what we think. I think there might be conversations there. The only predicament is there would be a motion that would be forwarded or not forwarded. So that's the mucky part.
I kind of heard Sam. I don't think he said recommendation, but what did Sam just say? That he doesn't want to make a recommendation on something he hasn't fully evaluated yet.
But I'm confused. So as I understand it, if we were to approve this tonight with the stipulation that we get staff approval post, right? That otherwise it falls apart if we don't get that approval, then you would have enough time before council to make a typical recommendation.
Actually, wouldn't No, because and the dangerous slippery slope on that. Who makes a determination if it fell apart?
We've made a recommendation to council. Council would receive our recommendation.
Wait, I'm confused. In a normal situation where you have normal time, this went through normal processes, staff would give a recommendation for approval, denial, or table. That's how part of why we table, right? Can we not get that after the fact as a stipulation that we approve it upon staff agreeing generally to recommend approval? Does that make sense? I mean, I know it's backwards, but.
Well, I don't know why you couldn't do it, because it's your body, and if that's what you want council to know, you can do it.
Thanks for the loosey-goosey legal.
No, but I mean, but you can do it. I mean, you have wide discretion within applying the standards that you have. And there's 7 of you up there too, so that means you're gonna have diversity of opinion as well, and those voices have to be heard as you reach your consensus.
So,
To me, it's the same thing. All we're doing is making one possibly quicker.
I will vote at the table. If someone makes that motion, I'll vote no.
So, I like the rest here for the reasons they gave. Because ultimately, we want staff approval, and otherwise, we all are seemingly good minus these minor amendments. In one way, you have to wait, and the other way, if everything's good, then it goes forward, and if it doesn't, then it comes back to us anyway.
We got paperwork coming in like the night before. I mean,
No, but that's the thing, we're not approving.
No, but we're making a recommendation. We are
No,
one
with the stipulation
well,
that it doesn't approve it going forward.
But,
So
I mean, we don't really have. I mean, we have conditions related to development, but we don't typically have a condition like that staff approves.
So,
I mean, do we?
Just a point of clarification, and just because I understand where you're both going. A lot of times when we make a recommendation based on staff approval, it is things that are either in an ordinance or codified, and it is almost never on a conditional use. So it's as long as the city engineer approves the sewer plan, which is codified, as long as you're copacetic with the tree ordinance. These are things where city staff can say, it says turn left, walk 3 steps. Yep, they did it. This is obscure in its conditional use. So we could do it hypothetically, but we would literally have to say, do this, do this, do this. Because it's conditional use, there are inherently gray areas to this.
So, for example, though, when this was recommended for tabling, there were a lot of specific stuff, but there was also a general, this is a big project that we haven't had time and needs more review. That to me felt like a general statement, and I wouldn't mind that going forward. Does that make sense? It's not all codified, although the codified parts are codified, so we don't need to worry about them.
So, Sam, I mean, what in a world, like in part what we're talking about this tonight, because you just kind of said you didn't have time to review all the materials. What if the process had gone according to the way staff would expect?
He's not
it
going to
go?
answer that.
No,
I can tell you right now, he's not going to answer that.
What material did you receive when, and what would that compare to the material you were hoping to receive? What staff recommendation would you have, like, because something, we didn't have enough time to do something. So what would
I'm
we
the
have
only
had?
one who saw it before 7 o'clock tonight.
So I think, ideally we would have had it. We did get some drawings within a couple weeks on the fire truck radius, to their credit, but the bulk of what we were looking for was really this narrative letter that described how the comments were being addressed, so they could explain then what was on the drawings.
Okay.
So that we're not having to weed through everything and find it. So it's more of trust and verify. It's not necessarily that there was going to be. What I mainly wanted to hear about tonight was the building orientation and the use of the land. We can work out a lot of those other small details, but if the building is going to be changing its location, and that's completely changing the site layout, that is a big change. But a lot of these things, if that's not an issue, and I've heard one commission member talk about that, maybe 2, that's a minority of the commission. So if that is not an issue, then I think all the other things, as far as materials and signs and access points and fire hydrants, those are all normal things that we would work through.
Okay.
All right, so I'll accept the motion on this matter. I'm not going to sway it.
Whatever motion's made, I would recommend that it be a motion to affirmatively act. So the motion would be either to table, or the motion would be to go forward with a recommendation to council.
Decline, table. Those are your choices.
And we could do one and then the other. We could have a
Yeah,
motion to table,
depending
and
on
if
how
it
the vote
doesn't fly,
goes,
then we
you do
move on
whatever
to the
you
next
want.
one.
Yeah.
So I'll accept the motion.
Okay, I move to approve, under the conditions that we've talked about.
Well, actually,
Actually, you have to be more-
procedurally.
I apologize. Help me out.
Okay,
because I'm beat, so.
the motion that I think that we would like to see is a motion to move forward to prepare conditions or to make conditions to recommend to council, to present the issue to council.
Love it. That's what I meant.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
but technically that would be a motion to approve.
It would, but you haven't decided on all the conditions and everything that goes into that, and that conversation is going to take a while. That you're a volunteer board, you want to get home to your families tonight, so we have to
4
put-
hours and 7 minutes is my record.
So if this motion were to pass, then you would go forward and have that discussion to come up with the final statement that you would want to go to council. If it doesn't, then I expect that there would be an alternative motion at that point to table, at which point then you could give guidance to the applicant and we would be coming back to discuss
He
it.
added a mezzanine level to Parley Pro. I like that. I'm normally concourse upper deck. And if you're not into sports, you completely lost. My apologies. All right, so I'll accept a motion, and your motion is to, fair enough to say, continue the discussion towards a.
To make a recommendation with conditions to council.
All right, so we have a motion to approve with forthcoming and agreed upon conditions.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. This is actually a roll call.
Yes.
So if you vote yes, you are voting yes to continue the conversation and develop
to council.
and develop conditions to be sent to council. If you vote no, you are not necessarily voting no on the project or no, I want to table it. You're just saying no, I don't want this to go to council at this time with conditions.
Correct.
Ready?
Go for it.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Miss Webster,
Yes.
Mr. Arbuckle,
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge,
Yes.
Mr. Bracken,
Yes.
Mix Rosenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Watt.
No. All right, so the motion is passed to forward a recommendation to council for approval with conditions. So at this point, I think it's fair to say we are going to agree upon and vote on conditions to be sent to council.
Based on the staff recommendations, I mean, we start, where we, are we, accept? Yeah, like we have.
Starting point
We
is
have
the
14
previous
recommendations,
previous
are
recommendation.
still, are they all still relevant, the 14?
Yes.
Yes.
I've got them if you want me to go over them.
Go for it.
All right, unless you have other motions. Okay. So I went through all 14 and I added one. And then so no changes up through 12, and you don't have this in your packet, so
Do you have it electronically by chance?
I can find it.
All right.
Yeah.
If you can do that quickly,
Yep.
I think, just
Yep.
for transparency. Still need you to read it too.
Yeah. Great idea.
Should have brought it. Sorry, my kid's soccer game is more important than going home to get a packet.
This is why the laptop does some merits, because it's still posted for August 8th.
All right, so deleting this last part of number 12, because they have said that they have, basically would be not waiving the natural material requirement. That would be just taking that out. So they would have to comply.
Okay.
Yeah. And then no change to 13. and then no change to 14, even though we did discuss that.
Okay.
And then I've got a new one which is not on here, and that would be number 15, which would be the applicant shall investigate the possibility of an additional walkway connection between the south parking lot and Millette Hall.
So why just investigate a possibility? Why don't we say that a sidewalk, if feasible, you know?
Sure.
I mean, if it's infeasible, we won't, but, yeah, anyway, maybe it's the same.
I'm okay with the sidewalk, but I also want to be realistic that they can build the most beautiful sidewalk, and legally Miami can put a brick wall at the end of it. So I also don't want to set them up for failure with something that is potentially beyond their control.
If Miami builds a brick wall, we'll consider that not feasible.
Okay. Does it have to be brick? Miami brick? No. Could you go up to start at condition 1 just so
Yep.
those of us playing at home can see them? And much of this is codified or clarified.
So number 1 has actually already been done, but I would say just leave it in there. 2's been discussed already about the traffic study. 3, they've said they've already done that about the buffer requirement, 25 feet. And then shrubbery, they said they've already done that as well. Lot consolidation, we didn't discuss that, but that's typically a requirement. Access easements, we didn't discuss that tonight, but if you remember, there's an elimination of a driveway so that there's a need for the neighboring property to actually use the hotel driveway from Morning Sun Road. And then they have agreed to constructing a sidewalk along Morning Sun Road, which is actually an off-site improvement. Curbing, they've said they've already added that. Originally it was proposed without any curbing around the parking and drive, so that's been added in key areas. Fire hydrants, code requirement. And then this was talked about by Mr. Burnett about access. Sounds like that's a company requirement anyway that they would do as part of the construction. Stormwater, I believe that's already been done even before the application, but as far as water flow, that was a concern of the neighbors around the property, of water flow through the property. And then this gets into the section where we've already discussed it.
So there seems to be, at least from I think 3 people, if not 4, concern about beyond the now 15 conditions, the efficacy and as we talked about with Mr. Bracken, I think we need to give clear direction not only to city staff, and I don't mean direction as far as workplace instruction, but clarity of expectations so that they don't get stuck between commission, the applicant, and council, and whoever else wants to be involved. But I just think it's fair to staff that they know what our expectation is so that they don't have to make or be in a situation that is inappropriate.
I think they came up with these conditions. If we're approving them, they'll make sure that the aligns with these things, and so
The reason I say that is these conditions are based off of what they've had the chance to evaluate, and and speaking for Mr. Perry, what they've been privy to in the last 28 hours. So.
Well, that's, yeah, for example, I mean, I don't know whether we need to say anything, I mean, which drawings we're approving. The ones we just visually have seen, because for example, the dumpster thing was one that I had a problem with here, but it seems like it's been fixed, but you now have drawings, so like, yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, none of us have really reviewed the final drawings other than what we've seen here, right? So do we want to stipulate what drawings we're approving?
That is common to say.
It is.
to say the drawings as presented. So I think
Tonight
it's
at
critical to
7 p.m.
Well, but to that point, it has to be which drawings, because
Yeah.
the electronic was different than the paper.
Which is different from the,
So for the record, you're saying the paper drawings that were submitted to the commission tonight at 7 p.m.?
No, the paper ones are not what was visually prepared. Paper has the dumpster on the northern boundary. Electronic had it, funny enough, on the Miami side.
So the commission is relying on the electronic drawings that were presented.
That's
by
what
the
I'm.
applicant.
That's what
Well,
I'm.
well,
Yeah, that's what
Has-
we're trying to
has
figure out.
staff- Have you seen those other than just visually?
This is the first time I've seen them.
This is where.
Well, on the paper drawing I have, I've got the new dumpster location.
There's
Where?
multiple copies. One has it, one doesn't. For example.
Where's the one that has it?
It's in
Oh
one
yeah,
of the packets.
the one in the Staples has it.
So that would have been the one that we had previously. So,
This is why you don't build an airplane while you're flying it.
but that's a a dumpster. That's a code requirement that it be screened properly and it be accessed properly. So it could actually change according to staff requirements for the truck to be able to access it and all that kind of stuff.
But I do recall last month's conversation, or at least conversations based off last month. There's a big difference between the dumpster being up to the northern side where there's two residents and being in the southeast corner where Billy Tailgater 5 times a year might think about possibly seeing it.
Well, it's not just about screening. Those trucks come in at 5 o'clock in the morning and they bang the dumpster over the top.
So that part, I think.
So is that condition number 16, or I mean, we neither need a condition pegging it to whatever drawing we like, or we specify a
I would
condition
just specify it.
that is that the dumpster location as shown visually on the southern edge of the building,
And not within X amount of feet of any dwelling,
Yeah.
residential dwelling?
You know, the dumpster shall, as shown in the drawing, at the south side of the building.
We can make that 16.
All right. This is the speak now or forever hold
All
your
right,
peace
since
portion of the meeting.
that's a thing, and it's not in our code, so I'm just asking this, and this is, does Marriott have plans to install electric vehicle charging for those guests who will be arriving and spending the night? It's not in our code. It's not a conditional use thing, but it's smart practice aligned with our values. So I'm not going to mandate it, but you may have thought of that kind of stuff already. A level 2 charging in a hotel is a no-brainer in 2024, but that's just me expressing my desire that that's again, it's outside the scope of our code, but since I speak loud and forever hold your peace, I'm going to speak now.
Guess what's going to be in code next year?
Yeah.
I concur. It's going to be people going to the hotel will want it very, very shortly.
Yeah.
Won't even be us.
Mr. Smith?
Cheaper to do it during construction than it is to come back and
You wire it now.
add it in.
Says the professional designer. Ms. Webster, do you have any thoughts that you'd like? It doesn't have to be about electric vehicles.
No,
It doesn't even have to be about trees.
Yeah, no, I
Or
am.
sidewalks.
I'm fine. I have nothing, no other requirements.
Mr. Arbuckle?
I support the electric vehicles.
I said it didn't have to be about that. Okay. Any other conditions? Again, can't say that this is the most comfortable process I've participated in, and ironically, I worked in corrections. So that was for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if Mr. Perry had expressed more qualms, I would have voted you on that with no. But I heard Mr. Perry say that he has most of the information he needs. But this is not a precedent we want. I mean, like, we're voting on stuff we haven't seen in paper. Like, in principle, we should just be, this is not good practice.
So I will say this because I love to say it. If I can weave the word perpetuity in, we can't, nor do we have the ability to decide what is and is not a precedent. So we can't say, hey, we're going to do this one time. Swear, we're never going to let it happen in the future. It doesn't work that way. So that's where I'm very concerned about this, is what happens in 2 years when somebody else does this. We're going to have a great discussion about, well, but that was different. Or, I mean, we even had that with the pandemic. If you recall, we've had things come in front of this commission in historic architecture 3 times because of timelines and things of that nature. So that's why I'm very steadfast to the fidelity of a process, because we have it for a reason.
I think this is categorically different. We don't even have, like, this is all preemptive. We don't even have the property yet. The whole process is backwards. I don't think it's going to happen again unless we don't fix our coordination with the county.
I don't think it was our coordination with the county that put us in the timeline.
No, it did absolutely
Yes.
not. But if we work out how things go with the county going forward, we won't have this weird situation where it's both annexed and it's Schrodinger's property, right? it's annexed, it's not annexed, it's counties, it's ours, all simultaneously. I don't think this situation will hopefully come up again. I certainly, yeah.
But let it not be said, like, that we're unfriendly to development. We are expediting a process. We're waiving code requirements. We're making recommendations based on plans we haven't seen in paper. So, you know, whatever people say, don't let it be said that we're sticklers to the law, because if we were sticklers to the law, we should table this tonight.
I would also like to go back to college and have all my term papers regraded by the professor before they had the chance to read it.
So I agree with all that, but most of this is just a matter of order, and I don't think the results are any different. I don't like the rearrangement of order, but I think ultimately all the same things that we care about and that would be looked over will be looked over and have been concerned about.
So in certain corners of law and government, my favorite term is ex post facto, after the fact. So sequence is critical.
It's not if you stipulate the approvals that we already have, which is why I kept saying that and everybody else said it.
Sounds like we're covered.
But yeah, we're repeating ourselves.
I would weigh in if you ask, but I'm happy if you don't.
Do you want to weigh in?
Well, what I would point out is that you're correct when you think about a process, but the process is still premised upon Planning Commission making an advisory recommendation based upon going through a process, which I would argue that the Commission has done. And I would argue that the Commission has done it in a fairly thorough way. And that there were unusual circumstances that relate to this unique property being outside of the city, the need for pre-annexation agreements and other things to foster a form of economic development, because that's really what we're talking about and what the needs of the community are. So I think it's perfectly appropriate for a process like this to occur. I think it is legal. It is contemplated by the code. And I think that the body has done a really thorough job of reaching a consensus that you can be proud of what you did and how you deliberated and thoughtfully came up with a solution to address the situation.
I also, I do support economic development, and this is just for the record, is we are and have been looking at ways to improve, revise, and streamline our code and process and zoning and things of that nature. I will recognize that this is just a timing issue as far as what we've had the capacity. We got grants, we have a lot of things going on in community development. So I pray that in the future we don't have this, because I think, especially in a changing climate of what once was legal and now is legal and this and that, I mean, I will refrain from a stark example I've given before, but you know, you hear this, it's about economic development, and actually I have a lighter note, is drilling in the Arctic is about economic development, but other people would have a different purview of that. So I never want us to say, but for economic development, because that is a paradoxical handcuff we don't want to put on. So, all right, is there any further discussion on the motion? Are we clear? I think it was 16 conditions now. 14 as presented, 14 that were presented. I think it was 11 or 12. The reduction from 50% to 19 was taken off, so 50% as codified will be expected.
Yep. And I did a reword.
Yeah, because you. Yeah.
So on the walkway, I changed it to shall construct, if feasible.
Yeah.
And then 16 is the dumpster shall be on the south side of the building, away from adjacent residences.
Perfect. Any further comment, deliberation, opportunity for Ms. Miller to play with the 3-minute timer? All right, so technically I need a motion to approve, because we did technically have a motion to approve, but we're having a sub-motion to the motion to approve. I'm trying to cover
This is
my...
I move approval of PC, whatever the number of this one is. With the conditions.
I don't even know what my agenda is now. So PC 2023-07 with the 16 conditions as presented and captured by city staff. So that's the motion.
And based on the record, including the math presented tonight, I guess that's just inferred.
Yes.
Was Mr. Arbuckle adding anything to that?
Was that a second? Were you seconding or?
No, I want to make sure that they actually review, that they approve, that they not only review, but they.
Is that a friendly amendment?
That may be applied, but I just wanted to make sure that Sam looks at it, gives the okay.
Can't hear Mr. Arbuckle. So the comment was that the Director of Community Development has the opportunity to review in an amicable and proper fashion and has no concerns. Because he doesn't have the ability to approve, unfortunately, but has no concerns that...
I wonder, something like that, you're satisfied that the designs meet the conditions.
Just add that as a 17th condition.
Yeah, so 17 being...
Friendly amendment sounds like it was agreed upon.
Okay. That prior to first reading by council, staff is satisfied.
And I would leave it at staff because we do have a fire chief and engineers and other folks and a law director.
Satisfied that the conditions have been met. Okay.
Second.
All that for the second. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is everybody, I'm basically going to ask a question. If you have any questions on procedure, what we're voting on, you want to have Mr. Perry reread the 17 conditions. It'll technically be 3 plus the 1 wording change, but I just want to make sure as we're voting, you understand that by voting yes, you are voting for the 17 conditions and staff, unilateral staff approval, or unilateral staff absence of concerns. A no vote would be no. So, hope that's clear as mud. Mr. Perry, if you could call the roll.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Webster.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg.
Yes.
Mr. Arbuckle.
Yes.
Mr. Prithridge.
Yes.
Mr. Bracken.
Yes.
Mr. Watt.
No. Motion passes. Okay. All right. The next order of business, and I will hand this off to Mr. Perry as soon as I read the identifiers. We had an administrative decision in consultation with city staff on PC 2023-10 for 6711 Ringwood Road. It was a minor amendment to a final platted development up at on the north side of town. So, Mr. Perry?
Yeah, thank you. We normally don't really present these because we don't want to give the impression that it's something that needs to be discussed and voted on. But since this was a denial administratively, I did want to explain that we did spend a lot of time on this. We take any denial very seriously because we want to make sure it's defensible and well documented. This was an administrative denial, which means that they can apply for a full application for a new subdivision, or they could revise plans and resubmit information. They decided not to do that. So we did provide them several different options. This was an unfortunate situation that with the Mayday Business Park that we've tried to work with them on, we just couldn't find a way to allow a lot or multiple lots to be created that didn't have frontage on a public street. There actually has been one. in the time that I've been working for the city of Oxford. That was part of the Bishop Square development. One of the buildings that's behind the bank actually does not have frontage. The difference is that project was planned and designed all at one time instead of being platted out where there's not an understanding of what the uses will be of the properties. So we didn't completely close off the possibility that a landlocked parcel could not be approved, but we did make it pretty clear that we expect more before that can be done. We did sketch a potential subdivision for a new street that would go into that development, a public street that would allow lots to have frontage on a public street. We also are still looking at the possibility of access to 27, even though they just barely touch the highway. That would potentially take some land acquisition, some variances from the standards for driveway spacing, a frontage road from an adjacent property. But if that was done, that would be another way they could potentially get more use out of this property. But they acquired this property under the conditions that it currently is. So there really hasn't been frontage from the beginning. They've just decided that they wanted to try to sell off the existing gun range separately and create lots in order to do that. But it's very common for planning commissions to have input and review and concerns, and that's why these things are in the code. Whenever land is being divided, that's potentially increasing demand on public services, and access is a big one for that, is how you get to property. So I think if we knew more about what the land uses were going to be, and that there was a better explanation of how the driveway would be maintained like a public street, then I think it would be okay, but it's just not to that point.
Thank you, sir. All right. Well, with that, it's 9:14 and we've run out of things to talk about. So I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Smith with the motion.
Second.
Ooh, Ms. Webster beat you to it. Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Seeing none, we are adjourned.